Welcome to Influence to Death, your guide for navigating the wild world of wellness influencing. Hi, and welcome to Influence to Death. I am your co-host, Victoria Lafont.
I'm your other co-host, Hannah Wright, and today our guest on the podcast, you may recognize him from a previous episode, Jameson Simpson.
Hey, Jameson, you don't have a bio, so
No.
we're not even going to offer if you want us to read it. 'Cause you don't have one.
Let's read it.
You do look kind of fat, though.
Do I?
Yeah.
Maybe it's my beard. I've grown a beard for the first time. So
Hannah's fat
I
to
think
Jameson
you look
is
great.
is
Why
like a.
did you call him fat?
Oh, it's
no, that's a compliment for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Don't. She's not putting me down.
Yeah. I think he's gonna go to bed tonight and be like, yes,
So I'm fat.
Sweet.
Aw, that's so sweet.
Because I was just terribly skinny my whole life, so it's like I have that body dysmorphia kind of thing where I always see myself as skinny no matter what. So the fantasy of fat is always this pinnacle that I'm trying to reach.
I hear that. I was also super underweight, and I understand that. Now I'm overweight, and so I don't feel that anymore. But for so many years, if someone was like, "Ooh, you look like you're like filling out, or you're getting kind of plump," I was like, "Oh, that's great."
It's so funny. They're like, "Damn, that was supposed to be an insult."
Yeah.
So there's just a couple things. One, this episode is on medicinal leeches. Two, we're the Influence to Death podcast, and we are your guide to the wild world of wellness influencing. You can find us on Substack, influencetodeath.substack.com, and we're also on Instagram at Influence to Death. And then we're wherever you get your podcasts, and please subscribe to the podcast. We love doing this, and for as little as $5 a month, you can support us. And in the future, pretty soon, I think we're going to have podcasts that are just for subscribers. So get in early, show us the love, and then you will get those special episodes.
Yeah. Thank you guys for supporting us and listening and coming back every time.
Yeah, we've gotten some cool comments. Actually, today, Hannah, I tagged you in a comment on Facebook about leeches. So I was researching for this episode, and I have used leeches personally, medicinally, and read a lot about them, but did not know that medicinal leeches are hermaphrodites. Did you guys know that?
I did.
Did not.
Didn't know that. And so I posted that on Facebook, and then one of our listeners, this woman that I know, she grew up in France. She told this story where she had this wart under her fingernail, and they like did everything. She said that they froze it like down to the bone, and it was so painful she passed out from the pain. And then her grandmother, her like French grandmother, was like, you need to go get leech therapy. And sure as shit, she went and got a leech put on there, and she was like, it was gone forever.
Wow. That is cool.
So wild.
Pretty amazing.
I'm nervous. Leeches freak me out. Like I have a like very visceral reaction. Maybe that's just normal. That's like a human thing.
I think it's pretty normal.
Okay. But
I mean, they're worms.
Yeah.
No one really likes worms.
No.
They're just not a favorite.
Well, gardeners like worms.
Yeah, but they like them like in an abstract way. They don't like worms to hold. I mean, maybe some people, farmers probably like to hold them, I guess. I don't know. On their body, exactly. In their mouths or whatever.
In their eyeballs?
In their eyeballs, yeah.
Whoa.
So, and that's...
it's going to get crazy up in here. Wait. Yeah.
Oh, whoa.
Okay, if I'm fidgeting a lot, it's because I'm trying to sit in seiza, and because it's good for my back, but my feet fucking fall asleep, and then I have to keep
what
moving.
Is seiza?
It's a traditional Japanese sitting position where you're sitting on your lower legs and your heels, basically.
Oh, yeah.
It helps to keep your spine straight. It's good, but your shit just goes to sleep, you know? And I don't know how to avoid it. I keep trying to find the perfect spot, and I don't know if it exists. And then I get up and I'm like hobbled.
I think you have to go back and be reincarnated as a Japanese person.
Yeah, like a tiny person, exactly.
Yeah. Jameson's 6'3", by the way, so that might be part of it.
Not that I'm saying, calling them tiny or anything like that. Just, I imagine that if you're Japanese, you have, I mean, I don't know. Does it matter if you have, I guess there's probably some math around the amount of weight that's on your lower legs and gravity and, that whole thing. So
No, dude, you're definitely fatter. It's not just the beard.
I'm fatter? Oh, that's good.
So the reason we had Jameson on today anyway is because, like I said, I've done leeches. I've used leeches medicinally. Jameson has used leeches medicinally and was part of the friend group that talked me into it. I got peer pressured to using leeches, and he is living in a country. Can I say where you live? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, totally.
He currently lives in Albania, where there is a practitioner near his home that administers leeches medicinally, and he has leeches
I do.
right
Oh,
here.
should I show you guys the leeches? Should I bring them out? Bring
Right.
out my pets?
Okay, so and Hannah's reaction is
Okay,
totally
you
normal.
can't really, because the temperature is so cold in the jar. Here.
So do they like to be really cold?
Yeah, they like to be cold. It's actually really tough on them in the summer to be in these jars. Yeah, you need to change the water regularly. Make sure. Sometimes I have to put ice in the water because they really do not. They'll die if the water gets to a certain temperature.
Wow.
I guess it's probably something to do with oxygen content in the water, and when it gets warm, the oxygen probably isn't enough or something. They require a lot of oxygen. So I don't know a lot about this, but I imagine that they get down into the mud or the bottom of a stream when it's really hot out, if it's a shallow stream. So
wow.
Yeah.
So maybe I was just Hannah, do you want to?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, despite, so anyone else that's listening that is like, what the fuck are y'all talking about leeches for? That would be me. I'd be like, what is this? But despite that feeling, you can tell that I have, when I was reading the notes on this and the history, it is really fascinating. And also the fact that leeches are actually approved by the FDA for certain uses.
Totally.
Yeah.
Had no idea. So I just wanted to put that out there. Stay with us if you're like about to like throw up in your mouth and you're gonna hide under a blanket and like run away. Just
and if he doesn't do it, just remember that Gwyneth Paltrow supports the use of.
Oh, does she?
Well,
I didn't know that.
Tangentially, we'll
get
to that.
Okay.
Hannah, how do you want to talk about the history? Do you want me how do you want to?
I think you should go for it. I want to listen. You put all this together and you know more about it. You've written about hirototherapy, so why don't you take the history?
Yeah, so that's the technical name, because the Latin name for most medicinal leeches is Hirudo medicinalis. There's other species that are used medicinally also. There's over 600 species of leeches. They are hermaphroditic, which I just thought was fascinating. I mean, I didn't even think about this till right now, but like, how do they multiply? Like, how do they breed?
I think it has to do with the environment. I might be misquoting this, but I think when they have the right environment, this mossy kind of, they need a dry spot and a wet spot, like where they can get out of the water and do their egg laying. Then maybe they just are inspired at that point to lay eggs or something like that.
That's a big question mark.
Aren't cockroaches hermaphroditic too?
I don't know, but that puts an even more gross spin on it. So I'm
just
not thinking about that.
Sorry.
And isn't that like eels? Eels, like scientists have no idea how they reproduce. It's like a huge mystery. Isn't that right?
I don't know. What? Let's look it up and see if.
Yeah, so they kind of look like eels. I mean, I know it's not the same thing.
They look a lot like eels.
They move like eels too.
Yeah.
When you see them move, you want to see them move? I'm gonna see if I can get.
No,
Hannah does.
You don't?
I just won't look. It's fine.
Actually, now you know that this is being syndicated to YouTube, like the actual video. I checked yesterday, so people can see it, which is great.
Okay. Are you guys gonna get demonetized if I show a leech swimming?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we don't know, because here's the thing. This is the bottom line. Number one, we are not recommending that people order leeches off the internet.
Right.
Jameson and I did.
I'm not an expert. I'm not a leech pro. I'm not coming on here saying that I'm like some leech guru guy. I'm just a guy who experiments on himself.
So that's the first point. And then number two, it's like, we are going to talk about some of the risks, and they do exist, even in a medical setting. So, but first, the history. So let's talk about the history a little bit more. They've been around, well, I mean, obviously as creatures for a long time, but from a medicinal perspective for over 3,500 years. So there was a painting found in Egypt depicting the use of medicinal leeches around 1500 BC was when the painting was dated. That's pretty cool. Interestingly, only a few species consume blood. Sanguinivorous is the technical term for that. They are approved by the FDA in certain, specific situations, mainly when people get any type of reconstructive surgery done and there's what's called venous congestion. So again, I'm not an expert on this. I've just read a little bit of the research. Because the arteries carry the oxygenated blood to the areas of our body, and then the veins carry the non-oxygenated blood back to the heart. Sometimes when there's some type of like a finger gets put back on or some type of like skin reconstruction, there can be what's called venous congestion, where the arteries will put in oxygen rich blood, but that area of the body doesn't have the ability to pump out the oxygen depleted blood. So they'll use leeches in that circumstance to get rid of the oxygen poor blood. Essentially, it acts like a stand-in vein until the body can heal itself. So they are FDA approved for that use, and I'm pretty sure that use only, and they're a medical device. I think it's considered like a sharp, like a needle would be. So pretty interesting, like current use. A little bit more history, which ironically, the guest that we had on before this episode, Hannah, it was in her class that I did this research, was in Dr. Minnick's class. So I wrote a little bit about this. Centuries old therapy. It was used in China, Greece, in different Arabic countries. So it's been in many different areas, the use of leeches traditionally. It was present in the 18th dynasty pharaoh's paintings, which was the painting in Egypt that I talked about before, and the Bible and Talmud, which is a Jewish religious text, describe medicinal use of leeches. I'm no Bible scholar, but somebody out there is. Fact check us. Let us know. I was raised Catholic. We don't mess with the Old Testament. We just hang out in the New Testament. The Greek physician Galen used leeches according to a patient's humor. It was based on like the 4 humors of that era of medicine. While the Islamic author Avicenna wrote in his book Canon of Medicine that leeches be used to treat deep veins, which is pretty interesting. I mean, full circle, and recommended hydrotherapy for skin conditions. In the 19th century, leech therapy became so popular that the lucrative trading of leeches led them to becoming an endangered species. That's bananas. So that's pretty wild. And then there's this very interesting like back and forth kind of definition between the word, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Old English, leech, and the word physician. So it's sort of like, I mean, I've read about this for years, trying to find like, did the word physician come from the word leech? Was it just associated with that because physicians used leeches medicinally? But it means little healer.
Right, little doctor. Yeah.
Yeah, little doctor.
Oh, that's kind of cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and here's the crazy thing is once you start to like be around them, after the initial disgust, which Hannah, I had to have my husband deserves like the biggest blue ribbon ever. We went online, ordered leeches off the internet because I would have done.
Where did you order them from?
I think it was leeches.net. Although when I did a podcast with Ari the other day, he looked up leeches.net and I think it's leeches.com is what he found.
Okay.
The whole time I'm like, nobody do this. Do not try this
Don't do it at home.
This is a bad idea.
Oh, gross. It is .com. No.
So you ordered them off the internet.
Why is that grosser than .net?
It up and it was just leeches, like the whole page. Was just...
It is. Yeah, there's a lot of pictures on there.
You get to pick which ones you want. But so you order them off the internet and they mail them to you in like a Rubbermaid container.
Okay, I had a terrible experience with that we're going to talk about.
And then so we get them to our house and I'm like, I can't touch these. They're like, I'm like completely disgusted. And so Andrew gets them out of the container for me and like helps me. And this was at the time, Hannah, when my rosacea was so bad. It was like my face would just
Dude, your skin looks great, by the way.
Yeah. And
yeah.
We can talk about that after. It was, I mean,
really good. Yeah.
Actually leeches, and I think I was using like some type of CBD oil. It did make a difference in my skin. So
wait, did you put leeches on your face?
Not where you could see them because they do leave scars. Like,
Sometimes, yeah.
I actually have leech
Wow.
scars because I would put them over my liver, but I did put them like on my mastoid processes back
That's
here. So then you just have these like leeches hanging off your body.
How long? How long do they stay there?
Like an hour about?
Yeah, it depends on the leech. It depends on the size. It depends on how hungry they are. It can be. I've had leeches drop off in like 10 minutes, and then sometimes it'll take
So
an
they drop
hour,
off by
hour and a
themselves.
half. Yeah, they drop off by themselves. That's what you don't want to prematurely take
Yeah, you don't want to tug on them.
them off.
Okay.
Because they actually, just before they drop off, there's a last injection of these amazing chemicals that they.
Which
Yeah, and I was reading in the research you pulled up, Vic, that like if you take them off the wrong way or maybe taking them off prematurely, it's like they can like backflow like toxins that they pulled out of you back into you or something, and then that could lead to sepsis or something.
There can be problems. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a pretty good history of
That's
leeches.
good.
A little like modern history, like I said, I think it was in 2017. I might be wrong about the year. Gwyneth Paltrow, has this company Goop. It's like kind of has this like reputation as being like so crunchy, so overboard, like $30 lip gloss and these like very bougie techniques, sort of, like off script. And so she had this health summit, and at the health summit, one of the guests talked about getting leech facials. So it's kind of been brought up into, like not medical use, like not medically supervised use.
I think Demi Moore too is into it, and that's been publicized. She uses I don't know if she actually some people just use the leech blood or the leech saliva, and they don't actually get the leech therapy because that has its own. They each have their own
grosser.
special. Oh, dude,
that's so wild.
The blood.
I can imagine this like super swanky, bougie, kind of secretive, like Hollywood spa where you have to get a special code to go in, and then it's just like leech
gore.
You just lay in a leech hole. This is a cool little tidbit that I just wanted to share. So Andrew and I went to Barcelona the week before the borders closed for the pandemic. We happened to be in Barcelona for our honeymoon. And it's kind of my habit to, when we go to a European city or country, to look around wherever we are for an herb shop, which is a tradition that was started because, Hannah, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, Jameson. I know you know, like I think I was in Brussels, and I had a really horrible urinary tract infection, and I had to find some solution. So we just happened to Google this herb shop in Brussels, and it was like the most beautiful old herb shop, and they gave me herbs for the UTI that knocked it out. It was such a blessing. But so after that, I'm like, whenever we travel, I just like look up herb shops. So we found this herb shop in Barcelona, and we walked over there, and there was this huge fountain inside in the middle of the herb shop. It was like old, like hundreds of years old. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, why is there a fountain? And the dude working was also this older man. There's all the like wooden drawers with herbs.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, this is the leech pool. This is where they kept the leeches. And Andrew looked at me like,
no,
don't say leeches.
He didn't want you to get the treatment, or what? He did.
There
was
weren't
afraid
leeches
to steal their
in it.
leeches?
There weren't leeches in it at the time, but I think he was just like, please don't have this discussion with this Spanish stranger who's like probably already thinks we're idiot Americans.
Did you ask him anything about it though? Like, were they breeding them in the fountain or what?
I think I was basically like just trying to make sure I understood correctly. Like blood, like, and he was like, yes. Leeches.
Because if you just put them in an open like fountain, I imagine they would just crawl out all over your shop. That wouldn't be an ideal.
So they're like, they move. They're like, I'm getting out of here.
Oh, they're mobile, like really, really sneaky. Yeah. I've had leeches disappear a few times, and they either like open portals into other dimensions, or they're like little Houdinis. They can just escape anything, almost anything. The tiniest little, how cats and mice can like collapse their skeletal structures in order to get through like spaces that their body shouldn't fit. Leeches are like next level.
I mean, I think that they crawl out of the water and dry out, and then like the cat eats it. but
yeah, eventually if they crawl out, they're doomed.
they dry out. They have to
Unless
be
you're
in
like,
water.
yeah, because we've found, this is awful, but we found like a few bodies, like the aftermath of the Great Escapes, and just these little, crusty little buddies. They shrink down to almost nothing.
Yeah, they're water creatures.
Yeah.
So here's the deal, though, is that in developing countries, leeches are a problem. Like there's many case reports about people coming in with health issues. They don't know what's wrong. Some of it is, it's like, it's kind of surprising, and for me it would be incredibly shocking. Vaginal leech bites in children are commonly reported in certain areas in India. Nasal leeches, so the leeches go up people's nose and then they don't know that they're there. There's one case report that was unreal. So a leech got into someone's peritoneal cavity.
Oh my
That's
God.
like where abdominal organs are. Like you can only see that. Well, the only way I've known to see that is with a vaginal ultrasound. And that's how they found it, was an abdominal ultrasound. And then they saw that the leech was there. So for some people in, like water that
Mhm.
is I don't want to say dirty water, but like
No,
in
it doesn't have to be
natural
dirty.
waters,
Yeah.
it's, if anybody's ever watched The Great Outdoors with John Candy, and
Mhm.
who's that other actor that
yeah,
he totally,
uh,
he was in Ghostbusters, and
Bill Murray.
uh
No, Rick Moranis. Is it Rick Moranis?
no,
No,
yeah, you're
dude, I don't.
getting
One
close.
of the
Anyway,
SCTV guys.
he's like very, very into UFOs and aliens.
Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
Yeah, they fall asleep in the canoe when they're fishing and they get leeches all over them.
I don't even remember that scene. I gotta go watch it after we're done.
I mean, if you grew up like I did, like swimming in creeks,
yeah,
there's leeches. Like I've seen leeches, and that's like has always been my biggest deterrent to like being in a creek, especially going under the water. Just this like very ridiculous paranoid that I'm going to come up and there's going to be leeches like all over me, and then what do? I can't touch them. I'm just going to be covered in leeches. So maybe that's a very irrational fear, but
no, it's super rational.
They're everywhere. They're in
water. Lakes. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. They're in freshwater all over the place. But a lot of them aren't medicinal, right? Like Victoria said, there's 600 species that they know of, and I think only 9 of them are medicinal, or 9 have been identified that are in regular use. So most of the leeches that you get bit by are not medicinal. Unfortunately, that would be great.
They're in the leech mafia.
You'd be getting the leech mafia.
I know, no clue. But yeah, maybe they have higher risk. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. This is interesting though, Jameson. I thought this actually might be practically useful for you. One of the research papers that I read talked about how to remove leeches, and that they've found salt water is the most effective in causing the leech to relax and release. And they did state, I think, Hannah, you brought this up, extra caution should be used when removing the leech as to not have reflux of contents back into the bite for risk of infection, as well as increased bleeding. Yeah. I think we're clear on Hannah's bias about leeches.
Yeah.
I'm just so like, it's just, I have this, but I have a weird like, creepy crawly like phobia, like snakes, even ferrets. Don't like ferrets. I don't like the way they move their body. Like,
oh wow, okay,
like,
yeah, that makes sense. That kind of like that undulating.
It just like
okay.
Freaks me out. And I had this crazy story of when I was traveling in Asia. I can't even. It's hard for me to just retell it, like something that happened to me, because I get so like upset. Basically, it's not. I'm not. There's no need for me to
I'm pretty curious now, but
yeah. I mean, I don't want you to like feel bad though. So if it's
I also don't want to freak anybody else out who has the same kind of thing as me.
This is just going to be like a podcast of horrors instead of some kind of like information source.
So when we were traveling in Southeast Asia, we were in some really rural areas, and one of the places we were traveling to, we were on a bus with like a lot of other people, and so we stopped at this place to eat lunch that the bus driver just pulled over and let everybody out, and we went in, and it was kind of like a cafeteria style, like kind of in the country, and so we were just getting whatever they gave us basically to eat. And we had been there for like 4 months or something. And I saw this dish. It was like a stir fry and it looked just like fried okra. And I was like, I'm a Southerner and I love fried okra or like sauteed okra anything. And so I was so excited to have it. And I'm like eating it. God, it's so hard. And then I realized that there's like a spine in the middle of it. And I was like, oh, fuck, I am
What?
eating a snake. And I just had this like, I was like
Holy
trying not to be rude. So I'm like, I'm just going to keep it down. I'm going to be like polite. I'm not going to like freak out. And I was like, Andy, I think this is a snake. And he was like, that's okay. And he like kept eating it. I was like, I can't. I'm fine. I'm gonna be fine, you know. So, like, but that's coming from someone I have like a severe snake phobia. Like, it's
Okay, so did you
totally right.
confirm that it was a snake, or did you
It
just
was
quietly,
either it was an animal like of
or
some
like a
sort. It wasn't a plant. It was, I guess, either a lizard, snake, eel. We also would
with
see,
it?
like when we were traveling along the water in boats, we would see fishermen who were, I guess, like eel fishermen,
Ah,
and their boats, they're like long boats, so it would be just full of eels
ah,
all in the
whoa.
bottom. And yeah, wild, really cool, but definitely made my skin like crawl.
Was it full? Like, did it look like it was chopped
It
up, or
was
was it the
chopped.
full?
It was
Okay,
chopped
it
like
was like a big
section.
animal that was, or
Yep.
reptile, or whatever that
Yep.
is.
Do you know, I think there's something that I've read about, and if people listening know this better than I do, let us know. But where I think in our brains, there's like an evolutionary way where we're basically wired to be repelled by certain
Right.
movements of animals and
Mhm.
certain patterns that we
So,
see.
yeah.
Hannah, so it makes sense. And I don't think anybody, my bias with leeches was changed once I started to use them. I was
Mhm.
completely disgusted when they started to use leeches. I would go over to the house where Jameson was living at the time with our friends. These guys, they would all just be like in the driveway post leash therapy with these like bleeding wounds because we're going to talk about this and when we talk about the research behind it, but like once they like get done feeding, they come off because of what they put in you. It's this anticoagulant and the wound bleeds and bleeds and bleeds for like hours.
Yeah,
So
long. It
Wow.
can be a long time. Like, it can be 8 hours, 12 hours. I
I
mean,
would come over and they would just be covered in these like bloody on their liver, bloody near their heart and their lung
dude, the
points.
first time that I even heard about it, they sent me pictures of like of them in these shirts with holes in them and stuff, just to exaggerate the whole. And there was like blood pouring through the shirt and blood. I was like, was there like a drive by? What the hell? You know what happened here?
It looks
You
But
know,
yeah,
bad.
it's gory.
that's
It's
so
It's
been
gory.
interesting to your point, Victoria, that we have this natural kind of human innate fear or like discomfort of over that kind of stuff. The fact that we have that from our evolutionary development, and that we were still at what point in our history we recognized that leeches had this medicinal benefit and would use them and test it, even to contradictory to that fear or like natural fear, we were still like, hey, we
maybe
could
there's
use
something
these.
here. I
Yeah.
mean, it's one of those things where it's like with mushrooms, I think in kind of the same direction where it's like these ones kill you
Hmm.
terribly. These ones make you see God. These ones taste nice. Like, how did we put all that
It's
Right.
together?
weird, isn't it?
You
Right.
know?
It's so strange to think about that.
Like that's where
But
I'm kind of like aliens,
or
psychedelics, like
some
what?
shamanic ability to speak to plants or animals. I mean,
Hmm.
Or did
something.
we just
Yeah.
experiment enough where we were
But
like,
I mean, can you think of the chances of humans even like having survived this long if we were just like,
It would be,
trial and erroring everything?
yeah.
It just wouldn't go well, I don't think. Like, the chances are that most people would just die of eating, oh, that one was poisonous, John's dead, we'll just throw him off the cliff. Let's go on to this next plant. I haven't seen this one.
Let's
You
try.
know what I mean? It
or like
doesn't, how
watch
many
what
plants you,
deer
yeah.
eat or watch what other animals eat.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is interesting that yeah, like why and how did we go against what might be an inborn
Hmm.
patterning to get medicinal benefit? I this is I feel embarrassed. I like rarely feel embarrassed. I like really became endeared to my leeches. I probably had like 20 eventually. And so what you have to do is you have to have 2 containers of very clean water. And the reason that I kind of was thinking cold water wasn't great is because I was mainly keeping them when we lived up in Tahoe. So I legit would like have the leeches in this like cold water up in Tahoe. It was really clean. And you have to have the ones that have fed in a container and then the ones that haven't fed in another container because they will eat each other. You know, they'll like feed on each other because they want blood. So you kind of have to have them separated, you know, if you want to like more continually do the therapy, or you
Yeah, you
just have
can't
to
put
like
the
wait
totally. You can't put the fresh ones in with
the ones that
hungry
have
ones.
fed.
That's for sure. It
And
doesn't go
I
well.
like felt like sweetness. I was like, oh, these little guys are helping me. It really did feel that way. Um, so while like I like look back and I'm like, would I order leeches off the internet again? Oh, it's like risky. And we're going to talk about those risks. But at the time, I felt like there was benefit for me. So story. Um, anyway, Jameson, do you want
Funny
to
for
talk about
you.
your experience with leeches and what you think about them?
Sure. Why don't we start with the mailing of the leeches from leeches.com? And I don't remember honestly if it was leeches.com or it's a Canadian company, right? And
Yes,
they
so
ship
they're
them
in
over the
Canada.
border.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, it is leeches.com. So they don't really, you kind of just order it and there's not really any communication. It's
They
weird.
won't
And then
talk
it
to
just,
you.
yeah,
I called them.
there
Do you
must be
remember?
a legal thing. They're avoiding all possible, yeah, legal eventualities. So I was waiting for them. I didn't know when they would arrive, and it was the heat of the summer, and I just didn't think that, oh, I'm in a rural area. There, you know, I'm on a mailbox, and one day I went out to the mailbox. I check the mailbox every couple of days, but I went out to the mailbox, and they were in there, and it was fucking hot. I mean, it was like a little sauna in the mailbox. And leeches don't even like to be in warm water, let alone like in an oxygen depleted container that just got sent from Canada. And basically, they just got completely incinerated. When I opened it up, they were just liquid. It was awful. I mean,
Yeah,
it
and they're
was
not
awful for so many
cheap
reasons.
either.
Like, no, they're not cheap. They were like $20 a leech or $50 a leech. I
Oh.
don't remember. And you know, I felt bad for them. Like, this is what an awful fucking way to die. And so I wrote them immediately, and I was like, you didn't like give me any heads up on timing when these would, and now I've got you know, a thermos full of liquid leech. And they never wrote back. They never responded. They never even acknowledged it. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to order from you anymore. That's that.
So I
So,
called that company and spoke to a woman to be like, do you test them? Do you
Yeah.
like any? And she was,
right.
it was like, I don't want to say it was shady, but it did seem like they were trying to protect themselves. And so then I was like, I'm pretty resilient. I'm just going to try it. But yeah, there's not a lot of communication.
Mm-hmm.
Which is weird because, I mean, that's just super shady because what is it, the stat you put in here on the disease transmission from viruses, leeches carrying infectious diseases in
Even
medicinal
medicinal
leeches,
leeches, yeah.
up to
Uh-huh.
20% infection rate. And then the
Mm-hmm.
virus can live in them for like months. Like if
Yeah, as long
they,
as 5 months. This, I mean,
yeah.
it might be a good time to like go
I
through
don't
your
know how
stats.
reliable those stats are just because I don't think they've really been researched all that much. I think it's pretty limited data.
Mm-hmm.
And
Probably.
because like for now they're saying there's 20 chemicals that they've identified
Mm.
that leeches, you know, that officially have beneficial value that leeches inject into you when they're, but I mean, there's decent evidence that there's more than 200 different chemicals and they haven't even begun to scratch the surface
Mm-hmm.
with this. So I mean, I've just experimented on myself in my mouth and a bunch, and I've never had any problems. If, in fact, I would argue that leech is speed healing for the most part. Not to say that I don't want to diminish anyone that's had a bad experience with being bit by a leech and then having an open sore, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, something that happens. But I haven't had any, and when I experiment on myself, I tend to do something to an extreme, and so.
That is the understatement of the century.
It is totally. So the chances, you know, are pretty high that if something's going to happen, then I'm going to experience it, you know. And of course, I've had my share of weird stuff, but leeches never caused that I could see never caused any problems at all. So
So what
And
are
I
you?
have the same thing as Victoria, where I have that, I don't know, it's like a fondness for these guys because the exchange is like amazing. Like you can't, it's like you can't understand. Okay, you know what? It's like noni. It's like noni fruit. I think we talked about it.
We
We
did.
touched on it in
Yeah.
the last episode, but it's just disgusting. I mean, objectively, it smells disgusting. It tastes disgusting. It looks disgusting.
It does.
And
Noni looks
Okay.
disgusting.
So I have a theory that I'm developing while listening to you guys
Oh, that's
talking
exciting.
about this weird affinity that you develop this
Oh
love.
my
yeah, when
god, what
something
if we
heals
have
you,
like a
it's like
toxoplasmosis type
Yes.
connection
what?
like
Yes,
the people have with
exactly.
cats?
Like what about noni? How would you explain like noni like got into my brain and took over my brain and
Well,
made
I
me?
think you formed a
It's like
positive feeling.
cordyceps.
Yeah,
It goes in your brain, like turns you into like a noni
yeah.
zombie, and
Yes, dude. We don't know.
I mean,
and it makes me want to plant noni trees so that I can like proliferate the plant all over the world or something.
Yes.
so Hannah, I think you should definitely follow that and see what you can find. My guess with noni is that, but and probably with leeches too, although I'm very curious to see, is you had a positive, you have like a Pavlovian
Right.
relationship with
Right.
it, where it's like even though it was gross, you felt so much better that you formed a positive, pathway with it. Um, yeah, I kind of want to say, like, again, just to reiterate, we are not condoning or promoting the use of ordering leeches off the internet. And just to like clearly go through our bullet points of possible risk, there is documentation of HIV and hepatitis B when leeches were taken off of
Yeah,
fishermen in Africa. Okay. I have the citations. Yes, viruses can live in leeches for as long as 5 months. Studies have also shown that malaria is capable of replicating in the red blood cells that a leech ingests. And then, yeah, like Hannah, you said, even in medicinal leeches, there may be infectious diseases. This is the part that is important to maybe, like really keep in mind. The majority of these infections are caused by this bacteria, Aeromonas hydrophila, and that manifests in humans in multiple ways. It can cause sepsis, meningitis, and endocarditis. So, um,
meningitis. Wow, yeah,
yeah,
that's nasty.
It's scary.
and then it has to be treated with um, you have to medically treat it. You have to
Yeah,
treat it with prescription drugs,
it's like a fluoride-based thing, I think, isn't it?
fluoroquinolones,
Yeah.
right? Like the same drugs I think that are used to treat malaria.
Uh huh.
Mhm.
And so, even in the research paper, they say it may be reasonable after weighing risks and benefits to offer the patient antibiotics after a leech bite. So, that's not to say that they're not useful, but there are risks,
Mhm.
and they are, again, a medical device in the United
Right.
States, where we are, not where Jameson is. Jameson's in Albania. I don't know what they're
Yeah, I
doing
mean
over
these
there.
leeches are just out of the river, so
Are
it's not.
you
Yeah,
serious?
you think they have like a leech facility here?
Okay,
No,
well, I know that
this
you've been
is
to see a leech clinician there, right?
yeah. I buy them from him, and he gets them out of the river. I
Okay.
mean, the guy he gets them from some guys that dig them out of the river. I mean, he has like a group of guys that goes out, and I know,
Yeah.
but you
Okay.
know,
I have so many questions about that, but I'm also
I understand how that's horrifying in a way, but now that I'm saying it out loud, but I'm like, I don't know why. I think I just trust maybe foolheartedly, I trust something about nature, like just nature it'll be okay as long as if I was really immune compromised at this point in my life, I would seriously think twice
Yeah.
about doing something like that. But I feel like my immune system can take care of whatever
Mhm.
comes at it. So it's
And
not
if
a
not,
problem.
you're in a place where you could go to a medical facility and get help.
Yeah, there's hospitals. I
Yeah.
mean, where aren't there hospitals unless you're in the middle of nowhere? But I don't know if I trust the hospitals here. Maybe they're good. I don't know. They do a lot of plastic surgery. I could at least get like reconstruction of my face if it started rotting
You
off.
should actually see if they use them for their plastic surgery patients. That'd be an interesting.
That would be interesting. I don't think they do. There's only okay. So from what the guy here told me, there's only him and one other person that use leeches here medicinally, and the other person basically was one of his patients. Came a couple times, ripped off his information,
Oh
but
no.
didn't really get enough that they know what they're doing, and so they're offering treatments, but they're using the wrong leeches for the wrong, very small. They're medicinal, but they're too small, and they don't leave them on. They pull them off, and he
Mhm.
said it's a disaster. Like this is the problem, right? You need to know to a degree what you're doing, because you increase the chances of a problem if you're not letting them run their course.
Okay, Jameson, what other countries have you gotten leech therapy in?
I mean, I've only gotten leech therapy here and then administered it myself in the U.S. like you, but those I ended up getting leeches actually from the Philippines. That's where all my leeches in the U.S. came from. But people I know have had them done in Estonia and some other Balkan place. I think they're around. They're not in Mexico. We found one guy in Mexico City and basically asked if we could buy some, and I don't. Did he even say that we could buy them for us? No, he said we couldn't even buy them, and we offered some ridiculous price. So there's just no one. Well, there was a program, I think, funded by a university, like that was like ongoing research, and then I don't know why they just collapsed it. But there are medicinal leeches in Mexico, so maybe I'm just gonna have to dig around in the river if I go to Mexico and I want to get a treatment. I don't know.
It's so wild that we have so many advances in modern medicine, but yet we are still using leech therapy. Like that
It
connection
says
with
something.
nature, it really
Yeah.
says something. And I'm so curious about so like for y'all, like Vic, you said you use it for rosacea. So you're not putting it on your face where the rosacea is. You're putting it on different parts of your body. And then over time, the rosacea improves. So like what is going on to make that happen? Is it the bloodletting, or is it the substances that they contain that they're putting into your body that somehow affect your immune system in a way we don't understand? Like what is that mechanism?
I mean, do you want to answer that,
Yeah, I mean, we
Becca?
have research. I haven't seen. I would love, Jameson, if you have a link to anything showing like all the different constituents that you've heard about. I will tell you, like personally, it didn't. It like made a dent in the rosacea.
Mm-hmm.
Not much had made a dent, but then I also started to use them on. I had a knee. Why did I put it? Oh, I had a knee. My right knee. I decided at one point because Andrew was training for an Ironman that I was gonna like be a hard ass with my hypermobile body and like start training with him, like his distances. And my right knee was like, absolutely not. So it got all inflamed. I would use it on my knee for that. And then um, I had frostbite when I was young. I don't know, Hannah, you probably remember this growing up. We grew up near each other. It used to kind of snow in Paducah, at least when I was a kid. And it snowed really bad one Halloween. And I like insisted on wearing these like I was like this woman vampire for Halloween, and I was like, I have to wear these certain shoes. Anyway, I gave myself frostbite on these toes, and then
Wow.
it was like arthritis kind of set in. So I would put leeches on those toes, and I saw way, way better effects on my knee and on those toes than I did for the rosacea. Like, I don't think the mechanisms that led to my rosacea they're not like connected to the way that leeches would work to help you. So like
Mhm.
maybe some like very indirect way I like,
Yeah.
systemically got benefit and saw a little bit of a difference. But in the areas where I used it, where I had the arthritis and it was bad in those toes, that's fully resolved. Maybe it's other things too, right? Like it's not a controlled trial, but like
Right.
time wise, it was pretty connected. And then the constituents that I have found that leech saliva contains, the main one is this antithrombotic compound called hirudin. And then, I mean, you can see it. It's like Hirudo medicinalis is the Latin name for leech. So it's a protein structure. It's a peptide. It inhibits thrombin. Hirudin. It's an acidic polypeptide secreted by the salivary glands of the medicinal leech. And then, yeah, in Chinese medicine, it's called shuji. It's the strongest natural specific inhibitor of thrombin found so far. It's been demonstrated to possess potent antithrombotic effects in multiple studies. Recently, increasing numbers of research studies have focused on the antithrombotic activity of the derivatives of hirudin, mainly because these derivatives have stronger antithrombotic activity and lower bleeding risk. So they're basically trying to like hold on to the benefits and get rid of the risks. Additionally, various bioactivities of hirudin have been reported, including wound repair effect, anti-fibrosis effect on diabetic complications, anti-tumor effect, anti-hyperuricemia effect. So anti-uric acid, an effect on cerebral hemorrhage. There's also hyaluronidase in leech saliva, histamine-like vasodilators, and this platelet aggregation inhibitor called Calin or Calin, Calin, I don't know how to pronounce it. So essentially it's like what a lot of people like speak to in the research literature is like it's like an anticoagulative. And you can, I mean, you bleed a lot, you know, more than you would on a normal wound. But if people have, you know, like clotting issues, if they have like I think like atherosclerosis, like any type of like buildup, it might help break that down. But shit, I don't know. Like,
That's just, it's so
I mean,
cool.
it's really cool. There's actually, I don't know the quality of this clinic, so I'm not going to, you know, speak to it as if I know one way or the other, but there's a leech dental clinic in Arizona that's cropped up the last couple of years. I've been curious about it. There's one really bad review online, but you know, you just never really know.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
the thing is it's like, yeah, they do put beneficial compounds into you in certain circumstances. I mean, I think about somebody who might have like some type of like clotting illness, right? Where maybe they don't clot correctly. And we know that like some people have that. It's like, or if they have like
sickle cell anemia or something like that. But that would be the opposite, right? Or is that even?
I don't know
I
enough
don't know if
about
sickle
sickle
cell
cell.
does
I
it
thought
affect?
I thought it caused your blood to become
Really thick.
thinner. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's thicker. Maybe
I
I'm
think
just
it's
really
maybe it's
confused.
there's
But if
circulatory issues
you
because
have
of the
like clotting
size of the red blood
problems,
cell.
you probably don't. I don't know. Like you'd have to be careful
Or if
because
you're
you don't want to
anemic,
bleed
you don't
out.
want to.
If
Right.
you're anemic, yeah, you have to be careful for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, I've just so for dental problems, I can't imagine that there's anything that's simpler and more effective for just pain relief because there's a pain relief factor with whatever they're injecting you with. Analgesic, I
Oh.
guess.
Yeah,
That's what
they
it is.
do. They
Um,
initially secrete an analgesic, so their bite doesn't hurt very much at all.
it depends on where you have them. I recently had some. I went to the guy, and he put them on my spine, and
Ooh.
it was really painful.
Oh my
And
god.
I put them in my mouth all the time on my gums without any problem, except the horror of having a leech hanging out of your mouth. But you get used to that. But the suffering of having these on your spine, it pretty much hurt the whole time, and
Wow.
it was like being like a little knife digging in. But like you said, for the most part, it seems like it's just like a little pinprick. It's not a big deal. But for dealing with abscesses, gum inflammation, I imagine people that have like gingivitis or other bleeding. I started getting bleeding gums, and I take really good care of my teeth, so I'm not sure what was going on with that. But um, leeches is one of the things that put a stop to it. Just doing a course of 5 or 10
Wait,
treatments
do you put them on
in a
your
row.
gums in your
Oh
mouth?
yeah, that's mostly where I use them now because the
See,
difference with
I never did that.
okay, so anywhere you put leeches on your body except for your gums, you're going to bleed for, like we were saying, like 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever. But with your gums, it's the fastest healing tissue in your body, and so you're done the treatment, and within an hour and a half, the bleeding stops. So you get the benefit without the drawback. And so even if I was having anything going on with my upper body or my head or my gums or whatever, I would just put them on my gums because I can't stand the bleeding part. I don't have the patience for it, and I don't want to. Like a couple of times, I went to bed after putting them on my scalp, and you just wake up with like a cradle cap of dried blood on there. That's just like all enmeshed in your hair, and it's horrific. And then getting the blood out was like, I remember soaking in a tub with, for like an hour trying to get the blood out, and it was like then you can imagine then you're just bathing in your own
Were
blood.
you using it on your head to promote hair growth?
At the time I gave up on that though.
Your hair looks great.
Yeah, but I'm slowly I mean, it's just
Okay,
what
so
happens when you're
Jameson,
50.
I feel like you're the only person I could ask this question. Are you familiar with or have you ever done tray panning?
No, what is that?
Where you drill a hole into your skull?
Oh, I've read about this. Hell no, I would never do that.
Okay.
No,
Leeches
that's
are
the
okay.
Egyptian.
Hole in the skull. That's
I
how
Yeah,
we draw the
mean,
line. I'm
because
just kidding.
okay, so that's based on an Egyptian, that whole idea about enlightenment or something, and you release the pressure on
opening
your
a
skull, and
mhm.
it's just okay. That's just I don't know. It's some kind of weird, like masochistic, with like combined with a hippie fantasy thing about enlightenment, and I don't even buy the enlightenment thing, let alone just any of it. It's just the story that I read. The reason why I'm reacting so viscerally is the story that I read was a play by play of the guy. He took photos, he filmed it, everything, and they showed like at home, like
Yeah, I think it's the same thing I've read.
it
Yeah.
probably, and he said you could see his
Mhm.
brain pulsing in there
Yep.
when they
Yep.
got through and I'm like, no, like no, a leech. I put it on, it does its work. I bleed a little bit. I look like a ghoul. I take it, I spit. You basically you're going to be spitting blood for that period of time, a half hour, an hour, or something like that,
Mhm.
and then that's it. I don't have like a permanent hole in my skull with my brain pulsing, and
Right.
who knows what foreign stuff can get inside, particles that shouldn't be getting across the blood-brain barrier or whatever. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
it's
Okay.
it's so, oh man, that story is really disturbing.
It is. It's
We
wild.
must have read the same one.
Yeah.
But you have to admit, for somebody who is like, maybe for the first time, maybe they've like, okay, on Grey's Anatomy, this is a true confession. Andrew and I are totally addicted to Grey's Anatomy right now. So it's
I've
like,
never even seen an episode.
well, you're fine. It's
Okay,
basically like, don't do the
you're
first
fine.
line of cocaine, because then you're never going to want to do a line
Okay,
of cocaine.
I won't
So,
ever
but
touch
there's
it.
like one episode where they use leeches, in the show. Maybe that's their only exposure to leech therapy. And then all of a sudden they come across this podcast and there's these two total kooks that are like, hey, yeah, we just ordered them off the internet. And it's like, to them, the like the distance between, how do you say it, tray panning
Yeah.
and leeches is
Same.
not, they're the
Not
same.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no
Yeah,
difference.
I get it. I totally get it. And I must seem like an insane person, the things that I'm saying and the things that I've done. And I probably am a little insane, but ultimately it's like, well, I take full responsibility for my choices. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't, just like you said, I wouldn't recommend anyone else do this. I would never recommend anyone else do this unless you feel, well, let's just leave it at that. I'm not even going to go beyond that. But it's like, I'm not going to experiment with something that's so esoteric and invasive on my
Right.
body. And I don't consider, leeches aren't really, they do poke a little hole in you, but it's not invasive in the sense that you're going to have like a permanent hole in your skull. Like that's a whole different level of crazy.
They have 3 jaws with 100 teeth each in each jaw.
Wow,
So there's 300 teeth on a leech.
it's crazy.
That
They
is
leave
crazy.
this, it's like a little peace sign on you. It's like a three-way kind
Yeah.
of.
Huh.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like in Dune.
Uh-huh.
What are the
Totally.
worms called?
The worms.
No,
I
but
don't
there's
know.
like a name for it. I
Oh,
can't remember what
really?
they're called.
There is? I
Yeah.
thought they were just the worms.
One other little tidbit that I want to read, it's a study from 1991 called Medicinal Leeches, Their Medical Use in the Therapy Clinic. This is a quote from that study. Medicinal leeches are reported to inhibit platelet aggregation and correct the coagulation properties of circulating blood, as well as possess hypotensive and anti-sclerotic properties. So there is more than just venous congestion relief, although
Yeah.
that's all
There's a lot more. Yeah.
they're approved for. Yeah, and I mean, I guess I would say it's like Jameson and I were part of actually a group of friends, but and we all were like into experimentation with different ways of like enhancing health. I mean, we were like weird biohackers. We weren't using like metformin. We were kind of
That
like,
term didn't even exist when we were messing with
yeah, we
ourselves.
were
Like
just
we were just curious.
curious.
We
Yeah,
were just
and
curious.
it was like a hobby. I mean, I don't think any of us had like serious medical stuff.
I had some pretty serious
We
stuff.
have.
And actually, I don't even think I would have started experimenting if I didn't have health problems. I just would have been like, well, why would I bother?
Yeah.
Like
I would, because I think it's neat.
yeah. And you have genuine curiosity then. I just had genuine desperation when it started. And then it turned into something else. It evolved into something else.
Yeah.
But still, I don't know if I would use leeches on the regular if I didn't have a specific application. Like I don't do it just for
just to do it.
preventative medicine or something like that.
You
I
know,
mean,
now I would use it like if I've sprained my ankle. I like dislocated my ankle not last summer, but the summer before that. If I had a leech, I would absolutely have put it on my ankle.
that would be great. That
Like
would
I
be
had like
great. Yeah.
tennis elbow. I would use it there. It's like
I actually have trigger thumb, right? Have you ever heard of trigger thumb? Okay, I'm going to tell you about trigger thumb. I think people generally get it from either like overplaying video games, which I haven't been doing, or like jamming your thumb. I think I got it from like giving shiatsu actually to
shiatsu, yeah.
my wife, and I just was too enthusiastic, and I have hypermobility in some of my joints. I think I just pushed it too hard, but I couldn't get the leeches to bite my thumb.
Huh.
Like they'll bite my. It's like they don't like my thumb. They're very. You wouldn't expect it. You'd think like, oh, you give them food. Like here's a warm body to bite. You know, they'll just go for it. But they don't. Just they're very picky.
Mm-hmm.
They're very specific. They're like specific little bitches. And when I called the lady that provided all the leeches to me from the Philippines when I first got them because we were having trouble getting them to bite, and she had all these different techniques for kind of tricking them to bite, like putting a little egg on there, or you prick yourself a little bit and you know give yourself a little bit of
A little
give them a little
appetizer.
blood, yeah, a little appetizer, something to smell. But the egg apparently she thought worked. I never got it to work.
I wonder if there's a reason why they did, like if they can like sense something or smell something and they're like, I don't want that.
I've never found any consistent pattern that would explain why they go for some area and not another.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same thing with the mouth, as you can imagine, you don't want a leech crawling around in your mouth. So you have to make sure, I know, I'm sorry to conjure those images, but you have to be, you know, you basically have to develop a technique where you can control where they bite, especially if you're having a problem.
Yeah.
And you
area.
want to get that leech right there. And so I developed this funny, okay, so there's like a reverse psychology with leeches. When they do this thing where they coil up and then they reach out. They undulate like that just naturally, right? Not even when they're crawling. And so when they reach out, that's when I'll get them on the spot, and then I actually pull away from where I want them to bite, and then they'll cling to it because they don't want to be they don't want to be pulled away. Unfortunately, a couple of times I pulled too hard and I hurt the leech, and some of them recovered, and actually a couple of them died because they're really sensitive, and you can crush their little. I think each segment has.
Oh, I have a screenshot we're going to include in the show notes.
It has a whole nervous system, brain, and everything, and
I felt terrible about it. But the only way that I can get consistent biting without, sometimes you can fuck with a leech for an hour, and all your leeches, just keep trying them. You know, I'll just put one back. It's like, oh, you don't want to eat? Maybe this one wants to eat, and I'll go through them. And sometimes they just won't eat. So with this technique, I found, in general, if you go to put it on the spot, you just pull away, and then they're like, no, and they grab on, and then you can feel them biting. So you just got to be gentle.
Maybe we should say like a leech bite kind of feels like
it's like a bee sting
getting snapped with a rubber band.
Yeah, something like that. That's a
like I would even say like the bee stings I've had were not as they were more painful, the bee stings I've had, than getting bit by a leech. But yeah, I guess I want to like put this in context a little bit for people who are listening. It's like normally when we cover a topic, I mean, we do cover topics that are like controversial. This one is just more novel. And I think it's interesting because we actually have experience with leech therapy. The takeaway, though, is you shouldn't do this. That's the takeaway. But it's also some way, I think, where it's like we get so ingrained in like what is right and what is wrong, and like this is good and this is bad. It makes me think of that that Graham Rook theory, the old friends I guess it's a hypothesis, not a theory, but the old friends hypothesis, where, you know, he's like, there are some creatures, bacteria, viruses, animals, all kinds of things that we evolved with as humans. And it might be faulty for us to say like, these are just bad. Like
totally.
They might be negative in certain circumstances, but not in all circumstances. So
at my,
that's interesting that you say that, because I think part of doing leeches at home for me is just, it's like it's like owning your own health in a way. You know, it's like I don't put my health in the hands of so-called professionals anymore, because I have my own reasons for that. But essentially, the idea that something that's been used so historically for healing of all kinds, and there's a lot of information if you want to dig into it, just for if anyone has any curiosity about it, tons of stuff on the web, and way more on the web now about leeches than there was even 5 years ago. I mean, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, there was like very, very precious little, like a couple of websites. Now there's, all kinds of official stuff. But there's a history of these things being used, and it's not just, people still think that they associate leeches with just like, oh, it's that medieval, bloodletting, like, oh, how ridiculous. But it's actually not, for the most part, what they're taking. It's what they're giving, right? And that's not even that's really not understood yet. That's not been, people haven't been educated about that. And I think just the idea of taking your health in your own hands, whether it's herbs or leeches or whatever it is. I just love the idea of not just, randomly experimenting with things and then dropping dead of, because you can overdose on herbs. People think that herbs, any amount is safe, and that's just not true. Just like with leeches, you don't want to overdo it. Like, you don't want to place them in the wrong spot. It could be really dangerous. Like, you don't want to put a leech on your
oh my God,
on your jugular.
Yeah.
You don't. I can't even imagine. You'd just be like, it'd be like a Monty Python skit or something afterwards.
Oh my God,
blood spraying out of your neck. I mean, really, like that's what I imagine anyway. I mean, when I go into the leech doctor, I actually was okay. So I have varicose veins in my left leg, like the bulging kind. Andrew does too, right?
Yeah.
And he put him right on the vein. I was scared to put him right on the vein myself, but he's had enough experience where I was like, oh, okay. He put like 30 or 40 at one time. I have a picture, actually. I should try to find the picture for you. But
yes.
Oh yeah, Ali, do you have that picture?
Just send it to me, maybe.
With all the leeches hanging off my leg. Oh, yeah. Do you know where that is? That would just be funny to. Well, maybe it wouldn't be funny. Maybe it'd be horrifying.
It's gonna have
be funny for me.
It's so wild because after hearing all of this incredible information and like the medicinal qualities, I still do not think I could get past my own like thing with it. I couldn't use them. Like maybe if I was like put under and it was like in a medical setting and I didn't know it was happening, but voluntarily like be like, oh, my knee, I have arthritis in my knee, I'm just gonna pop one on there. Like I just couldn't do it.
Yeah,
like
it's creepy.
I can't get past it.
And it's hard. It's hard. It reminds me of when I started eating raw meat way back when, and the psychological barrier that you have to get past, because you're told that you're gonna die if you do this thing. Right. And then you experiment, and then you read some more, and then you meet some other people that did it, and you're like, wait, I'm actually not only okay, I'm better doing this thing. So look, some things we're told are true. And then other things that we're told, for whatever reason, there's a lot of distortion around it, and you got to find out the truth for yourself. And when you lift the rug on one of those things, if it goes deeply enough, it's crazy how you just suddenly see like rabbit holes everywhere. You see all these possibilities to explore things that you were conditioned to have a preconception about. And most people just marginalize it and write it off right away, but you realize, oh my gosh. And leeches are one of those things that's just, there's a lot of possibility there, and that's what I'm excited about. That's and I've seen it. I've experimented and I've seen what they can do. It's not a cure-all. Like, it's not like my varicose veins are gone now. It was more just to, as I said I don't use them as a preventative, but in this case it's more as a preventative. But with the gum stuff, I'll just use them to keep inflammation down and keep everything working properly. And generally, it's when I have bleeding or I have a mouth sore, something like that. What do they call them? Canker sore. Something like that.
How cool that it's like this little creature who their reflex is to latch on to you, and they're giving you all of these like anti-inflammatory like compounds or immune stimulating compounds. You know what I mean? Like just how wild that is. It really is incredible.
It's weird.
Like, what an amazing symbiotic thing.
Yeah.
So like they're getting something, you're getting something. There is a gross part about this in that, okay, so at the clinic, they kill at pretty much every clinic.
Grosser.
Grosser. Yeah, it's a grosser part. So they kill the leech after which is, I understand it. I understand it from the point of view of, we don't know with the blood, if someone's got a disease and you don't want to use that leash on another person, and maybe they can transmit it HIV or who knows what. There's some things I've read that suggest that maybe the leech body takes care of some of that, but there's other research like what you were reading today, Victoria, that they can still carry malaria or HIV or other things. So in the clinical context, I understand, but it's like if they're your leeches and you're using them, it's like they're like pets. They're little pets, and
that is
you want
how
to
they
take care of
feel
them. And,
when you start to have them. Is you're like, oh yeah,
you don't want them to die.
That's like some kind of parasite, like
dude. I want to know if that's true. It might be.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's weird to go from being like creeped out by to like, oh, I love this little guy.
Agreed. I
like,
kind of
totally.
Really. I feel like something's going on there.
Is it
but the same thing?
Toxoplasmosis,
yeah, with people who love cats.
Yeah,
it's like they can get that.
I love cats, so I don't know if there's any room left in my brain for all these different invading forces. If I have leech creatures and toxoplasmosis creatures, noni creatures.
Hannah, I'm just thinking it would be so cool if we could get a plastic surgeon to come on the show and talk about their experience with leeches, so that we kind of get both sides.
There's people that work with maggots too, and so that would be interesting to actually. Well, I mean, they've got. Yeah, I mean it's horrific, but like I don't have any experience with maggots. I don't like maggots, but they clean up the necrotic tissue, right?
Right. Yeah.
They'll like save a leg. Okay, so this is one of the things that leeches and maggots. Leeches. It sounds so bizarre, but it's like I could see them being perfect, like a perfect symbiotic relationship in terms of saving a person's leg from gangrene or something like that, or because the leech is going to get the blood flowing and speed up cellular regeneration, and the maggots are going to go in and clean up the necrotic tissue and clean it out. So it's like,
dude, there's actually a paper that I read called "Crawling Through the Millennia: Maggots and Leeches Come Full Circle."
I want to read that. Okay.
Sweet Jameson, thank you for coming on and talking to us.
That was great to talk to you.
Yeah, it's good to see you and your little fat face.
You didn't get to see. I was going to bring a buddy out so you could see him, but
go for it. Let's see it. Hannah,
you want to see it? The last
100%.
Okay.
But yeah, let's look at this.
Okay. Here's... So when I know. So when I'm using them on my gums, it's like I like to just handle them and control where they go that way, rather than people put them in these syringes or whatever. And it's like, I just find it easier to just work with them. They're like,
dude, it's been it's probably been 10 or 12 years that you've been using them, right?
Oh, more than that. Yeah, like 10 or 15, maybe something like that.
Yeah, because Andrew and I have been here for 7 years. Yeah, 10 or 15 years, totally.
Yeah,
dude. Well, thank you for coming on. She's being a mom and filming a podcast at the same time. So
yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool beans.
Thanks, dude. Tell Allie I said hi.
Okay, I will.